The city of Seoul sprawled beneath a sky heavy with clouds, the faint hum of urban life barely audible in the distance. Jinwoo Sung stood at the edge of an abandoned construction site, his sharp eyes scanning the crumbling structure before him. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. This was no ordinary place, it was the entrance to a dungeon, a hidden realm teeming with monsters and treasures beyond imagination. But this dungeon was different. It was alive, dreaming, and it had chosen Jinwoo as its prey. Jinwoo adjusted the black gloves on his hands, his movements calm and deliberate. His lean frame belied the immense strength he had gained since becoming a hunter, a warrior tasked with clearing dungeons to protect humanity. His journey had been one of relentless struggle, from being the weakest E-rank hunter to evolving into something far greater. The system, a mysterious force that had chosen him, had granted him powers beyond comprehension. He could level up, grow stronger, and unlock abilities that defied the limits of human potential. But tonight, he faced a challenge unlike any other. The dungeon before him was sentient, a living entity that twisted reality and preyed on the fears of those who entered. It was a place where nightmares took form, and Jinwoo knew he couldn't afford to falter. His motivation was simple: survival. Not just for himself, but for his mother, who lay in a hospital bed, her life hanging by a thread. The only way to save her was to grow stronger, to push beyond his limits and claim the power hidden within the dungeon's depths. Jinwoo's jaw tightened as he stepped forward, his shadow stretching long and dark behind him. The system's interface flickered in his vision, displaying his stats: strength, agility, vitality, and intelligence, all far beyond what any human could achieve. But even with his enhanced abilities, he knew this dungeon would test him like never before. The moment Jinwoo crossed the threshold, the world shifted. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and the faint sound of whispers echoed in his ears. The dungeon's entrance vanished behind him, replaced by a labyrinth of twisting corridors and shifting walls. The ground beneath his feet pulsed faintly, as if alive. Jinwoo's instinct screamed at him to be cautious. He activated his skill, stealth, blending into the shadows as he moved forward. His senses heightened, he could hear the faint rustle of movement ahead. A low growl reverberated through the corridor, and Jinwoo's grip tightened on the dagger at his side. The first monster emerged from the darkness, a grotesque creature with glowing red eyes and jagged claws. Its body was a twisted amalgamation of flesh and shadow, its movements unnaturally fluid. Jinwoo didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, his dagger flashing in the dim light. The blade struck true, slicing through the monster's throat, but the creature didn't fall. Instead, it let out a guttural laugh, its wounds healing almost instantly. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. This wasn't going to be easy. The monster retaliated with a swipe of its claws, forcing Jinwoo to leap back. He countered with a flurry of strikes, each one precise and calculated, but the creature's regenerative abilities made it a formidable opponent. Jinwoo's mind raced. He needed to find a weakness. As the monster lunged again, Jinwoo activated his skill, Ruler's Authority, summoning a shadow soldier from the ground beneath him. The soldier, a spectral knight clad in dark armor, intercepted the monster's attack, giving Jinwoo the opening he needed. He channeled his mana into his dagger, the blade glowing with a faint blue light. With a swift, powerful strike, he plunged the dagger into the monster's chest, aiming for its core. The creature let out a final, ear-piercing shriek before disintegrating into ash. Jinwoo took a moment to catch his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. The dungeon was already testing him, and he had only just begun. He pressed forward, his shadow soldier following silently behind him. The corridors twisted and turned, the walls shifting as if to confuse him. Jinwoo relied on his heightened senses and the system's guidance to navigate the maze. Along the way, he encountered more monsters, each one more dangerous than the last. He fought with a combination of speed, strength, and strategy, his movements a blur of precision and power. His shadow soldiers proved invaluable, their loyalty unwavering as they fought alongside him. As he delved deeper into the dungeon, Jinwoo began to notice something strange. The monsters seemed to be adapting to his tactics, learning from his attacks. It was as if the dungeon itself was studying him, analyzing his every move. This realization sent a chill down his spine. The dungeon wasn't just alive, it was intelligent. It was playing with him, testing his limits, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Jinwoo knew he couldn't afford to hold back. He needed to push himself further, to unlock the full potential of his abilities. The final corridor opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At the center of the room stood a massive, pulsating crystal, its surface rippling like liquid. This was the dungeon's core, the source of its power. Jinwoo could feel the energy radiating from it, a chaotic force that threatened to overwhelm him. As he approached, the ground beneath him trembled, and the air grew heavy with tension. The dungeon's final guardian emerged from the shadows, a towering monstrosity with glowing eyes and a body covered in shifting, black scales. Its roar shook the chamber, and Jinwoo knew this would be the fight of his life. The battle began with a deafening clash. The guardian's massive claws tore through the air, forcing Jinwoo to dodge with lightning speed. He countered with a barrage of attacks, his dagger and shadow soldiers working in perfect harmony. But the guardian's scales were nearly impenetrable, and its strength was overwhelming. Jinwoo's muscles burned with exertion as he pushed himself to the limit. He activated his skill, Bloodlust, enhancing his speed and power at the cost of his stamina. The world seemed to slow as he moved, his strikes landing with devastating force. Yet, the guardian showed no signs of weakening. Desperation crept into Jinwoo's mind, but he quickly pushed it aside. He couldn't afford to lose focus. Drawing on his remaining mana, he unleashed his most powerful skill, Dominator's Touch. A surge of dark energy enveloped his hand as he lunged forward, aiming for the guardian's core. The creature roared in defiance, its claws slashing toward him, but Jinwoo's shadow soldiers intercepted the attack, sacrificing themselves to buy him time. With a final, desperate effort, Jinwoo plunged his hand into the guardian's chest, his fingers closing around the pulsating core. The energy surged through him, overwhelming his senses as the guardian let out a final, earth-shaking roar before collapsing into dust. Jinwoo fell to his knees, his body trembling with exhaustion. The dungeon's core shattered, its energy dissipating into the air. The chamber began to collapse around him, the walls crumbling as the dungeon's dream came to an end. Jinwoo forced himself to his feet, his mind focused on one thing: survival. He sprinted through the collapsing corridors, his shadow soldiers clearing the way as debris rained down around him. With a final, desperate leap, he burst through the dungeon's entrance, collapsing onto the cold, hard ground of the construction site. The night air was crisp and still, a stark contrast to the chaos he had just endured. Jinwoo lay there for a moment, his chest heaving as he stared up at the starless sky. He had survived, but he knew this was only the beginning. The dungeon had been a test, a glimpse of the challenges that lay ahead. And as he rose to his feet, his eyes burning with determination, Jinwoo knew one thing for certain: he would grow stronger. No matter the cost. Jinwoo stood at the center of the dungeon, his breath steady but his heart pounding in anticipation. The air was thick with mana, and the walls of the dungeon seemed to pulse with a life of their own, as if the entire structure was alive and watching him. The dreaming dungeon was unlike anything he had ever faced before, a labyrinth that twisted and shifted, its very fabric designed to test the limits of its intruders. Shadows danced across the walls, and the faint whispers of long-forgotten voices echoed in the distance, but Jinwoo's focus remained razor-sharp. He had no time for distractions. The dungeon's core was close, and with it, the source of the overwhelming power that had drawn him here. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled, and a massive fissure split the floor open. From the depths emerged a towering figure, a creature of pure mana and shadow, its form shifting and contorting as if it were made of liquid darkness. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Jinwoo, and a guttural roar echoed through the chamber. The creature lunged, its movements impossibly fast, but Jinwoo was faster. He sidestepped the attack, his body moving with the precision of a seasoned hunter, and countered with a swift strike from his dagger. The blade sliced through the creature's form, but to his surprise, the wound closed almost instantly. The creature retaliated with a sweeping claw, forcing Jinwoo to leap backward and reassess his strategy. Regeneration, Jinwoo muttered under his breath, his mind racing. He couldn't rely on brute force alone, he needed to outthink his opponent. As the creature charged again, Jinwoo activated his shadow extraction skill, summoning a legion of shadow soldiers to his side. The shadows materialized in an instant, their forms solidifying into warriors armed with swords, spears, and bows. They moved as one, their movements synchronized with Jinwoo's will, and they surged forward to meet the creature head-on. The clash was explosive, the sound of steel meeting shadow reverberating through the chamber. Jinwoo watched intently, analyzing the creature's movements and searching for a weakness. The shadow soldiers managed to hold the creature at bay, but it was clear they were outmatched. The creature's sheer power and regenerative abilities made it a formidable foe, and Jinwoo knew he couldn't afford to waste any more time. He clenched his fists, feeling the surge of mana coursing through his veins, and activated his ruler's authority. The air around him crackled with energy as the gravitational force intensified, pressing down on the creature and slowing its movements. The creature roared in defiance, struggling against the invisible weight, but Jinwoo didn't let up. He dashed forward, his dagger glowing with mana, and plunged it into the creature's core. This time, the wound didn't heal. The creature let out a final, deafening scream before its form disintegrated into a cloud of black mist. But the victory was short-lived. The dungeon wasn't done with him yet. The walls began to shift again, and the chamber transformed into a vast arena filled with traps and obstacles. From the shadows emerged a new wave of enemies, elite dungeon guardians, each one more powerful than the last. Jinwoo gritted his teeth, his body aching from the previous battle, but he refused to back down. He knew this was the dungeon's way of testing him, pushing him to his absolute limits. And he was determined to prove that he could overcome anything it threw at him. The first guardian charged, its massive axe swinging in a wide arc. Jinwoo ducked under the attack and countered with a spinning kick, sending the guardian stumbling backward. But before he could press the advantage, another guardian was already upon him, its spear thrusting toward his chest. Jinwoo twisted his body, narrowly avoiding the attack, and summoned his shadow soldiers once more. This time, he directed them to focus on the guardian's weak points, exploiting every opening they could find. The battle was chaotic, the air filled with the clash of weapons and the roar of combat, but Jinwoo's mind remained calm. He was in his element, his instincts guiding him through the chaos. As the fight dragged on, Jinwoo began to feel the strain. His mana reserves were dwindling, and his body was littered with cuts and bruises. But he couldn't afford to falter. He pushed himself harder, his movements becoming faster and more precise. He activated his Dominator's touch, enhancing his physical abilities to their absolute limit, and unleashed a flurry of attacks that left the guardians reeling. One by one, they fell, their forms dissolving into mana as Jinwoo pressed forward. But just as he thought the battle was over, the arena began to collapse, the ground crumbling beneath his feet. Jinwoo leapt to safety, landing on a narrow platform that hovered above the abyss. Below him, the darkness seemed endless, and he could feel the dungeon's malevolent presence growing stronger. He knew he was close to the core now, but the final challenge awaited him. From the shadows emerged the dungeon's ultimate guardian, a being of pure mana, its form radiating an overwhelming aura of power. The guardian's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and it raised its hand, summoning a massive sword made of condensed mana. Jinwoo took a deep breath, steeling himself for the fight of his life. The guardian moved with blinding speed, its sword slicing through the air with deadly precision. Jinwoo barely managed to block the attack, the force of the impact sending him skidding backward. He countered with a barrage of shadow arrows, but the guardian deflected them effortlessly, its movements fluid and calculated. Jinwoo realized that this opponent was on a completely different level. It wasn't just strong, it was intelligent, adapting to his strategies and countering them with ease. He needed to change tactics. Summoning every ounce of his remaining mana, Jinwoo activated his shadow exchange skill, swapping places with one of his shadow soldiers to create an opening. He appeared behind the guardian and delivered a powerful strike to its back, but the guardian anticipated the move, spinning around and slashing at him with its sword. Jinwoo barely managed to dodge, but the blade grazed his arm, leaving a deep gash. He winced in pain but didn't let it slow him down. He knew this was his only chance. With a roar of determination, Jinwoo unleashed his full power, his body glowing with an intense aura of mana. He charged at the guardian, his dagger blazing with energy, and the two clashed in a blinding explosion of light and shadow. The force of the impact sent shockwaves through the dungeon, the walls trembling as the two titans fought with everything they had. Jinwoo's movements were a blur, his strikes precise and relentless, but the guardian matched him blow for blow, its sword cutting through the air like a bolt of lightning. The battle reached its climax as Jinwoo and the guardian locked blades, their weapons trembling under the strain. Jinwoo could feel his strength fading, but he refused to give up. With a final, desperate surge of mana, he pushed past his limits, his dagger piercing through the guardian's defenses and striking its core. The guardian let out a deafening roar as its form began to disintegrate, its mana dissipating into the air. Jinwoo collapsed to his knees, his body battered and exhausted, but a triumphant smile spread across his face. He had done it. He had overcome the dreaming dungeon. As the dungeon began to collapse around him, Jinwoo felt a surge of energy coursing through his body. The dungeon's core had been destroyed, and its power was now his. He stood up, his wounds healing rapidly, and looked around at the crumbling ruins. The dreaming dungeon had pushed him to his absolute limits, but it also made him stronger. He knew that this was only the beginning, there were still greater challenges ahead, and he would face them head on, just as he had done today. With a final glance at the ruins, Jinwoo turned and walked away, ready for whatever came next. The air crackled with tension as Jinwoo stood at the heart of the dreaming dungeon, his shadow soldiers arrayed around him like a living fortress. The dungeon's core pulsed with an otherworldly glow, its energy shifting between reality and illusion, a manifestation of the dungeon's sentient will. The final battle was upon him, and the stakes had never been higher. The dungeon's voice echoed in his mind, a haunting melody that sought to unravel his resolve. You cannot win, Shadow Monarch. This is my domain, and here, I am eternal. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the dagger forged from the essence of his shadows. We'll see about that. The dungeon surged to life, its walls shifting and warping as monstrous illusions materialized from the ether. Beasts of impossible size and shape lunged at Jinwoo, their roars shaking the very ground. His shadow soldiers moved in perfect unison, intercepting the onslaught with brutal efficiency. Iron, the hulking knight, cleaved through a towering serpent with a single swing of his massive sword, while Tusk, the agile assassin, darted through the chaos, his daggers finding their marks with deadly precision. Jinwoo himself was a blur of motion, his movements a dance of death as he carved through the illusions. But for every enemy that fell, 2 more rose in its place. The dungeon was relentless, its power seemingly infinite. Jinwoo's breath came in ragged gasps as he pushed his body to its limits. His muscles burned, and his mana reserves were dwindling, but he refused to falter. He could feel the dungeon's influence creeping into his mind, its illusions growing more vivid, more personal. Memories of his past failures and losses flashed before his eyes, his mother's death, his sister's suffering, the countless lives he couldn't save. The dungeon's voice whispered again, softer now, almost sympathetic. You carry too much weight, Jinwoo. Let go. Surrender, and the pain will end. For a moment, he hesitated, the weight of his burdens threatening to crush him. But then he remembered why he fought, why he had come this far. No, he growled, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. I won't give up. Not now. Not ever. With a roar, Jinwoo unleashed the full extent of his power. Shadows erupted from his body, engulfing the battlefield in darkness. His soldiers, empowered by his will, grew stronger, their attacks more ferocious. The dungeon's illusions wavered, their forms flickering as Jinwoo's resolve shattered their hold. He charged forward, his dagger glowing with an eerie light, and plunged it into the dungeon's core. The ground shook violently as the dungeon let out a deafening scream, its energy surging in a desperate attempt to repel him. But Jinwoo held firm, his determination unyielding. This ends now, he whispered, pouring every ounce of his remaining strength into the strike. The core shattered, its light exploding in a blinding burst that consumed everything. For a moment, there was only silence, a void where time and space seemed to cease. Then, slowly, the darkness receded, and Jinwoo found himself standing amidst the ruins of the dungeon. His shadow soldiers stood silently around him, their forms flickering as if unsure of their existence. The air was heavy with the weight of what had just transpired, the finality of the battle settling over him like a shroud. He had won, but at what cost? As the adrenaline faded, Jinwoo felt the full extent of his exhaustion. His body ached, and his mind was a whirlwind of emotions, relief, sorrow, and a lingering sense of emptiness. He knelt amidst the rubble, his hands trembling as he surveyed the aftermath. The dungeon was gone, its influence eradicated, but the scars it had left behind would remain. He thought of the lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the burden he now carried as the Shadow Monarch. The victory was his, but it came with a price he would have to bear. In the days that followed, the world began to change. The destruction of the dreaming dungeon sent ripples through the fabric of reality, altering the balance of power in ways no one could have predicted. Gates, once a constant threat, began to stabilize, their frequency decreasing as if the world itself was healing. Hunters who had once lived in fear now looked to Jinwoo as a symbol of hope, a beacon of strength in a world that had long been shrouded in darkness. But with this newfound hope came new challenges. The Hunters Association, once fractured and divided, began to unite under Jinwoo's leadership, their trust in him unwavering. Yet, there were those who saw his power as a threat, their fear and jealousy driving them to plot against him. Jinwoo, for his part, remained focused on his mission. He knew that his journey was far from over, that there were still battles to be fought and mysteries to unravel. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of respite, a chance to reflect on all that had transpired. He visited his sister, her smile a reminder of why he continued to fight. He met with his comrades, their camaraderie a source of strength. And he spent time alone, his thoughts turning to the future and the role he would play in shaping it. The final battle against the Dreaming Dungeon had been a turning point, not just for Jinwoo, but for the world itself. It had tested his limits, forced him to confront his deepest fears, and ultimately, revealed the true extent of his power. But more than that, it had shown him the importance of resilience, of holding on to hope even in the face of despair. As he stood atop a hill overlooking the city, the sun setting in the distance, Jinwoo felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but he was ready. For he was no longer just a hunter or a soldier. He was the Shadow Monarch, and his story was far from over.